Well, this is the first game I've ever done a review on that was close to the release date. Yeah, only by 2 months, but it's still close enough. It was also pretty convenient how close this game was releasing on my birthday. Anyway, Kao the Kangaroo, I know close to nothing about this franchise. Apparently it was a platforming trilogy from the PS2 era, and they were pretty obscure games that only amounted to a cult following. All I know about it is that the first game is pretty much a crash game, the second game is kind of like Rayman 2, and the third game takes place in a volcano. The second, which is the fan favorite of the trilogy, got re-released on Steam 3 years ago, and I actually got it because it was only $1.99. In a world where a lot of dead franchises like can make a comeback like Crash, Spyro, Medieval, and even Bubsy, probably only a matter of time before Kao got some time to spotlight, but instead of just being a remaster of the first 3 games, it's actually just a reboot to the entire series, with new character designs, more world building, and new characters, and more. Surprisingly, this game is still under the license of Tate Media, who developed the original games and want to revive the series to celebrate its 20th anniversary, which I guess makes sense, but why did it take so long for them to make another game for the Kangaroo, because it's been 17 years since Kao 3, and one would assume that after that long hiatus, they'd probably lose the rights to the IP, or the company would have been defunct, but Tate's still been around after Kao 3. I mean, they only made a spin-off game called Kao Challengers, and even that was just a PSP re-release of the second game, but that's pretty much it. I never really played the original trilogy, but I did hear some people talking about the new game in a Discord server that I was in, and it did look something that I was interested in, since after getting into Crash, I started playing a lot of older games, specifically from the PS1 and PS2 era, so this game had my interest. I also like the art style, since it kind of reminded me a lot of Crash 4, and I really love Crash 4's visual style. I bought the game during the Steam summer sale, and I think that it's time for me to finally talk about this game and give my thoughts. I probably could have played through the original trilogy before getting into this game, but since it's a reboot, I don't really have to worry too much about continuity. But since this game is only a couple months old, I'll try my best to keep the spoilers to a minimum, but I can't make any promises. And I don't mean just spoiling the story, I mean like spoiling the gameplay too, so if you're interested in playing this game, or if you haven't played it yet, I appreciate you for watching, but please stop watching right now because I don't want to be the guy who ruins the experience for you, so yeah. But if you already played this game, then you're welcome to stay as we dive into the Kao the Kangaroo reboot. Also, before I start, does this font look familiar to you? Let me just show you a thumbnail to one of my videos. Now does it look familiar? I decided to use the same font that I used to use for my videos, Luckiest Guy, and it's not just them either. I've been seeing a lot of people using that same font ever since I stopped using it, but jokes on them since I just switched to Global now, so I see them trying to steal that from me. Meet Kao, a young kangaroo who lives on Hopalloo village with his mother Marlene and his mentor Walt. Lately he had a dream where he was following his older sister Kaya, who was talking to a voice. Before he can catch up to her, Kaya gets devoured by a dark creature, and after he can chase after her, he wakes up. Kao thinks that it might be an omen for what's to come, so he wants to search for his sister. His mom lets him go since he tried stopping his father and sister and that didn't work. So just for a little bit of context, Kao's dad, Kobe, disappeared a while ago to fight a dark power, so then Kaya tried looking for him, but then she disappeared also. Anyway, Marlene suggests that Kao first gets training from Walt before he starts his journey. On his way there, he finds Kaya's spirit, and she leads him to his dad's old boxing gloves, which were buried by Walt because the gloves are corrupted by an evil power in them called Eternal Energy. Once Kao tells Walt about the dream that he had about Kaya, Walt decides to let Kao show what he can do with the boxing gloves. After Kao finishes his training, Walt encourages him to go test out his new boxing gloves on the Terror in the Eternal World. While he's on his way to fight him, he finds out that the gloves are sentient and it can talk. They call themselves the Eternal Gloves, and it seems that Kao is the only one that can talk to them, while his dad couldn't. After Kao takes out the Terror and goes on to the other 2 levels, he tries to explain to his mom that he's going to try and go away, and she obviously doesn't approve of that, especially after finding out that he's been wearing the same glove that his dad was wearing. But after taking some things into consideration, she decides to let him go. After traveling to the Hungry Jungle to find Jaibaya, who is a friend of Kobe, Kao and Walt meet his merchant Minky, who tries to get them to buy his stuff. I know that doesn't really sound important, but it actually plays a part later on into the game. Anyway, Kao goes out to face Jaibaya, who initially was aggressive, but after Kao kicks his ass, he breaks out of the dark power that he was under control of, and tells Kao that his dad went to go see the oldest one, who apparently Walt was in a relationship with in the past.
Do you know where he went after?
I'm sure he went to see that crazy old goat. Walt, you should know who I'm talking about.
Yes, the oldest one, widely known, one of the best fighting masters. I know her.
Yeah, sure you do, sure you do.
After getting information about the Eternal Warrior, Kao and Walt go to the Frozen Mountains to get in contact with the oldest one. They find the oldest one, and Kao and her start fighting each other to see if Walt trained them good enough. After Kao beats the shit out of her, The oldest one reveals that she was working with the Eternal Warrior because she was tricked into thinking that her school could have benefit from it. She also tells Kao that Kai is at the Isle of Eternity after the oldest one told her that's where the crystals are made. So then Kao, Walt, and Gadget fly to the Isle of Eternity by plane, but because Kao was in the seat that had a broken seatbelt, lightning strikes and he falls off the plane. Kao wakes up in an area where Gadget's original plane that Kai crashes there, believing that she might be here somewhere. After searching for her, Kao finally finds Kaya, and she tells Kao that the gloves they're wearing are the only one that can destroy the Eternal World. They win a crystal rune for a whack-a-mole minigame, and they finally find Walt and Gadget. After a quick reunion, they find the Eternal Gate that might be where Kobe is. Once Kao finishes the final level, he finds out that his dad is turned into a dark crystal beast. So remember when I said that the merchant character would tie in later to the game? He's actually the Eternal Warrior, and that's obviously a pretty clever idea, because he never really considered the merchant to be the main villain. Especially before it gets announced, they should make Moneybags being the main villain. That would be so hilarious. After being the Eternal Warrior, Kobe and his kids finally reunite. And for some reason, every time I look at Kobe's design, I keep on thinking about that Giga Chad meme. You know, the buff guy with a nice jawline. I mean, I just see those ads on the kangaroo, it's like, damn. Anyway, Kao, Kaya, Kobe, and Walt come back home, and Marlene starts bitching at Kobe for ditching his family to fight evil. The gloves congratulate Kao, and the game ends with Kao and the rest of his family coming back into the house. I don't really expect a game like this to have an incredible story. I think the story in this game is kind of boring. I feel like the concept of the story is pretty good, Kao trying to find his dad and his sister, but when we're talking about the execution, that's a whole nother story. Nothing really goes on. I mean, I don't really think that the game does a really good job in getting me invested into the story. I feel like the reason for that is the characterizations. The characters in this game are just kind of going through the motions. Like, if you ask me anything about the characters' personalities, I'm giving you that blank stare. Like, I'm not saying that every character needs some kind of arc throughout the game, but there's just nothing about these characters that really stand out to me. Kao's just a I want to be a hero type character. Walt is just a trainer. And let me just say this right now. For someone who's supposed to be a coach for our main character, he doesn't really teach us any moves throughout the game. I mean, he teaches you the basics, but that's all he does in terms of coaching. I mean, it would be pretty cool if they did more with him coaching. Like, give Kao some more moves that he can learn. It's a small nitpick, but I just thought that it will give the character some more personality. Then there's Kao's sister, Kaya, and I honestly couldn't pick up what they were trying to go with her. I mean, I guess she can be like an overprotective sister, but there's nothing about her that could portray that. Now, to be fair, she doesn't appear until late into the game, so they didn't really have enough time to develop her character, but she could have been so much more. Then there are the internal gloves. When they're first introduced, they look like they're going to be present throughout the whole game, but instead they just appear, they talk to Kao for a couple of cutscenes, then they just disappear for the rest of the game until they just randomly come back at the end of the game, and that's it. There is a lot of potential for the gloves, but their presence is almost non-existent. It also doesn't really help that the voice acting in this game is utter shit. Or I'm over-exaggerating. It's not that bad. Like, I can tell that some people are actually trying like the voice actors for Kaya, Kobe, Marlene, and the Eternal Gloves, even though they sound pretty similar to Uga Uga from Insane Trilogy and onwards.
From deep inside my devil prison, I sent you simple instructions to follow. But you lost the gems. You lost the crystals, and I have lost my patience.
It pains me to say something nice, but I cannot deny that you have done a most remarkable job. Really, Kao. Good job.
But characters like Walt just sound kind of boring. Sometimes his voice actor just sounds like he's reading directly off of the script.
Nothing justifies what you've done. You took revenge on whole world. No thought of consequences.
And Kao kind of has reflections in his voice that kind of reminds me of my friend Cliff Turbo.
Hello guys, it's me Cliff Turbo, and I'm doing another walkthrough.
Kao, son of Kobe, your old friend. And I would like to speak to you.
But we're here in Russia, and Russia has the deadly club work.
These gloves really helped me give those frogsters a smacking. I don't see what the fuss is about. They're just normal gloves.
Sorry, Miss Ruby, you're not gonna scare more people today. I'm here to kick your ass.
Hey! You! Hiding out there in the dark? Come out and face me! I'm Kao, son of Kobe. I came here to kick your butt and chew bubblegum. And I'm all out of gum.
I said that Kai didn't have enough time to develop, but I feel like other characters didn't get to develop a lot either, and I think that's because that most of the cutscenes in this game are mostly just dialogue or just for jokes. Speaking of jokes, the comedy in this game is kind of hit or miss for me. I mean, some lines were pretty funny, and I didn't really burst out laughing at some of these jokes, but I did crack a smile at some of them. Like this running joke with Kao trying to get his hero stance right, like that got a legitimate chuckle out of me.
No one saw? That was lucky. Wouldn't want that on RootTube. Yes! Finally!
But then there's jokes like this that just kind of come out of nowhere.
More caves? Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Like, there was no build up to that quote. Like, it just came out of nowhere. Then there's moments where they actually got a pretty good joke, but then they just kind of ruined it.
And these are Dad's gloves. It's the only thing I have left of him.
Are you playing the sad kid card on me?
Why does that never work?
You need to watch less Tuk Tak, Han.
Tuk Tuk? Mom, you can't complain about it if you don't even know what it's called.
It's like you had something going there, but then you just ruined it, and it's not funny anymore. The main reason why I'm spending so much time on the story here is because I feel like they could have had something going on here with the right execution. I feel like the concept of the game is genuinely interesting, but it just couldn't deliver. Overall, I don't play games for the plot, but I feel like this game's story could have benefited from a couple of rewrites because the final product is very underwhelming. As for the gameplay, Tate Multimedia must have really loved Jak and Daxter. Like, I bet they probably have a rare golden model of a Power Soul in their work office. I mean, there's a lot of influences from other platformers like Crash, Spyro, Ratchet & Clank, but the one thing I thought most of while I was playing this game was Jak and Daxter, and it's not a bad thing. It's not like it was ripping off Jak and Daxter. It's not like Wrath the Cortex just doing what Crash 3 did. It's more like just recapturing the structure of the first Jak and Daxter game. There's 4 hub worlds in this game in total. They all lead off into 3 or 4 other levels with their own collectibles to get. There's 5 different types of collectibles in this game: the Crystal Runes, Gems, Ducats, Pages, and the KO Letters. The Crystal Runes are the only collectibles that are story related. There's a set number of them in each level, and you can find them in either pretty obvious locations or getting them by completing a specific task. To progress through the game, you have to collect all the Crystal Runes, which doesn't really sound as bad as it actually is. The KO letters are pretty much like the Kong letters from the DKC games. Out of all the collectibles, these are the ones that you need to watch out for the most since they're pretty hidden, like more so later on in the game. I managed to get all the KO letters in the first and second world. Third world, I'm always missing one letter. Anyway, there's 4 of them in each level, and they're needed to unlock different types of costumes in this game. In every hub world, there's a shop where you can unlock costumes by grabbing all the KO letters in a level. There's a lot of costumes that you can find, like the KO skin from KO 2 and the Explorer costume from KO 3, which you can actually get an achievement from. Anyway, the ducats are the only collectibles that are needed for 100% completion. Unlike the rest of the collectibles, the ducats reappear every time you re-enter a level. You can let these to buy stuff at the shop like extra hearts, extra lives, and costumes, and more ducats. They're kind of like the precursor orbs from Jak and Daxter, but you don't have people asking you for 90 ducats every time they need something from you. Finally, there's the gems, which I honestly don't know what they do. They're just kind of there. You don't get anything from collecting them all, and you don't unlock any achievements from it either. Finally, there's the pages. This game has a KOpedia, which gives a little bit of an insight for the characters and enemies in this world. You get these pages from either finding them at the level, or you can get them from beating the shit out of enemies. I like this because it gives a little bit more depth to the characters in this game. Inside the level, you can find bonus stages called internal walls. Here you do challenges for you to collect more gems and more ducats. Doing them all counts to 100% completion and an achievement. After you beat a level in the internal wall, you can go back to them via an internal wall that's in a hub world. The level design is mostly linear, but there's also branching pathways that lead you to collectibles. You'll be doing platforming most of the time, but there's also some different gameplay styles that break up the pacing once in a while, like sliding out ice pathways or grinding on rails all at Ratchet & Clank style. There's also these chasing segments, kind of like the boulder chasing sections from a Crash game. And I don't know if it's just me, but I swear the bowling rolling monkeys are way faster than they should be, because I died so many times because of them. There's also these segments where you can carry a crystal to remote platforms that you would fall through. While the level themes are pretty basic, like in Ice or Grassland, the levels themselves have things going on inside them that help make them stand out, like how in one level, there's a juice factory inside while you're platforming over big rivers of juice, and the final level is pretty much an amusement park. They're all pretty fun levels to travel through, but even though some of these levels are pretty fun, some of them just never know when to fucking end. Specifically, the later stages don't know when to end, and because of that, it kind of makes stages drag on longer than it needs to, especially if you're going for 100%. But overall, the levels are designed pretty well, and they're pretty fun for people who love these types of levels. For Kao himself, he's basically just Jak if he was a kangaroo and had boxing gloves. He can double jump in this game, and honestly, it's not really that good, because it cancels out all mid-air momentum that you had with your first jump. It's not terrible, but it did lead me to die a couple of times because of timing issues. He can also do the spin move in mid-air, and can do this roll move, which doubles as an attack too. When he's in mid-air, he can do the body slam attack, which got me into trouble in some levels because since I'm used to how Jak controls in the Jak and Daxter games, I have a lot of muscle memory issues because I keep on pressing the B button to do a spin and not a body slam. It also doesn't really help since, again, I'm playing the PC version of this game with a PS4 controller, and since Jak and Daxter are PlayStation games. You can see where I'm going with this. He can also climb by using his ears, which honestly is really crazy how those small little ears carry the weight of the rest of his body, because if his ears just ripped straight off the moment he tried to move, I would just be laughing my ass off. KO can also do melee combat like punching, which can get a little bit button mashy sometimes, but he keeps from getting repetitive with the finisher move. With every enemy KO kills, his gauge fills up, and once it's at max, he can do his finishing combo that can one-shot everybody in a 2 feet radius. While KO is climbing, he can also stretch his neck down to reach the lower areas. Honestly, it's kind of weird how he can even do this in the first place. Like, I know it's a callback to whenever he reaches bodies of water, he stretches his neck up so he can still breathe. Like, it's never really explained how he does it. Like, it's never even acknowledged, he just does it. I said that a roll move doubles as an attack, but it's also useful for dodging moves, just used to move out the way when the enemy is about to hit back. And you can use that spin move to attack enemies that are above solid ground. The goals also have some powers that you can use thanks to the crystals. First is the grapple hook move with that honestly does whatever the fuck it wants, because it's really finicky sometimes, and other times it just refuses to work because I counted a lot of times where I pressed the button and KO didn't do jack shit. And the physics are kind of wonky too, because when you're swinging on the crystals, it throws me off a lot. And since punching and releasing the grappling hook is mapped to the same button, it's going to lead you to releasing the grappling hook when you're trying to punch something or vice versa. There's also some elemental abilities that you can use like fire, wind, and ice. Fire is used for burning away cobwebs or activating heat-based platforms. The ice power is used to freeze paths, to freeze water and start ice skating. And finally, there's the wind power, which gives you the ability to pull objects around, or just pull platforms around enemies like the world's biggest douchebag. These elemental powers also tie into the boomerangs that you can find somewhere inside of a level. These are like the boomerangs from KO2, except that you don't carry them with you. There's a boomerang dispenser in every level where you can throw them at an enemy or throw them at a switch to reveal platforms. You can even strafe with them. I mean, I never used it, but that's still pretty cool. But if you have an elemental ability while you activate the boomerang dispenser, the elemental powers transfer to the boomerang, and the boomerang has its own abilities. With fire boomerangs, you can burn down cobwebs that are holding up platforms, and with the ice boomerang, you can freeze waterfalls to climb on them. Well, the gameplay is pretty solid. It's not the best game that you're going to play, but since it's coming from a relatively small development team from Poland, this is still pretty impressive. The bosses in this game are actually pretty good. Like, they're not amazing, but I was kind of expecting them to be wait for an opening and start wailing on them. But there's actually more depth to them. My favorite boss is probably the oldest one because it's the only boss where you have to use the elemental powers to beat her. The other bosses are alright. I like the final bosses since it makes you unfreeze projectiles so you can immobilize them. So the bosses in this game are pretty good. For a game that came from not a huge group of developers, this game looks pretty good. Yeah, it took a lot of inspiration from Spyro Reignited and Crash 4, but there are some things that it does so it doesn't come off as a complete copy of those games. The stage environments look pretty cool, the color palette is beautiful, and the character redesigns look pretty cool. With the original games, you can tell that they're going for like a more cutesy cartoon look with KO, but in this game, you get more of a naive teenager vibe from him, and I like it. It's a pretty solid look for the guy, and at times, he can be pretty expressive. But that's just the graphics though. The presentation is a little bit messy. The character designs are pretty cool. The characters themselves are pretty static. They mostly just move their lips and almost don't make any facial expressions whatsoever. And most of the time, the voice acting doesn't even align with the facial expressions. Like, take this cutscene for example.
Oh, Marlene! You're not going to believe what we've been through.
Really? And you won't believe what I've been through. I've been looking after this whole place while being a nervous wreck the entire time. Worrying about the three of you, and it's all because you wanted to be a hero.
Home sweet home.
If it's so sweet, then I hope you won't surprise me by escaping from it again.
Like, you see what I mean, right? Unless you were listening to the tone of her voice, you couldn't tell that she was angry, scared, or worried. Like, come on, even a PS2 game wouldn't do something like that. An early PS2 game for that matter, too. I know this is a small development studio that we're talking about here, but this kind of stuff just really bothers me, especially for a 2022 game for the current generation to be doing stuff like this. Hopefully, if they ever make a sequel to this game, we know that they can fix stuff like that. There's also a problem with the textures too, and what I mean by that is when some cutscenes start, the textures don't load up until a few seconds after the cutscene starts. That doesn't happen a lot, but I did notice it in the opening cutscene and some other cutscenes too. Apparently, this game had a couple of graphical glitches on launch, like the music not playing after internal world level, the autosaving not working on the PS4 version, and the UI disappearing after dying. These glitches were patched out not long after the game was launched, so I didn't really encounter anything that was game-breaking, but I did think that I was pretty weird how some pods would just poof out of existence after I break them. And I don't really consider this one a glitch, but for some reason when you're wearing a costume, it doesn't really carry on to the cutscenes. I just wanted to bring that up because it just looks weird. Overall, the game looks pretty good for the most part. The soundtrack isn't anything special, it's pretty atmospheric, so it's not that memorable, but I really like the theme that plays when we're going around Hopalloo Village. It's really relaxing, and it kind of gives me Sandover vibe from Jak and Daxter. Like, I know I've been bringing up Jak and Daxter this whole video, but I just can't help it. Like, when I think of Jak and Daxter, I'm gonna bring up Jak and Daxter. It also kind of feels nostalgic in a way, like I've heard it before. Walt's Dojo theme kind of reminds me of Insanity Peak from Crash 4 too, so the soundtrack is pretty forgettable, with a couple of good songs. I said that the voice acting is pretty hit or miss, but sometimes I couldn't even hear the voices because the music was too loud, and there's some sound effects that were really loud too, which not only drowns out the voices, but also can cause straight up ear if you're playing this with headphones on.
If it's so sweet, then I hope you won't surprise me by escaping from it again.
I promise. From now on, I will announce my epic journeys and excellent events.
I guess that's better than nothing.
I also mentioned earlier that KO Round 2 was released on Steam back in mid-2019. The reboot takes a lot of inspiration from this game specifically, and since this game is basically just a reboot but not as in-depth, I'll just take a quick look at it just for this video. So the story is pretty simple. It's about KO freeing his friends from the Hunter. It's a pretty simple story, but it's enough to get you to want to play the game. So no, this game is basically just the main blueprint for the reboot, so I'll try to keep this as brief as I can. KO controls almost like he did in the reboot. He can jump, double jump, take it through a 3-hit combo, do a mid-air spin, roll, and does his ground slam move. He can also strafe with his lock-on feature to keep track of enemies, kind of like in Rayman 2. This also works for the boomerangs, but unlike the reboot, you can carry as much as you want until you run out of them. KO also has the ability to just throw acorns to knock something down or just to activate something. The level design is kind of like the reboot with it just being a linear collectathon. The game has 3 collectibles: ducats, crystals, and stars. Ducats are pretty much currency, but it's only to get into other levels. Crystals unlock bonus levels that doesn't unlock anything as far as I'm aware. And stars improve KO's stats like hovering to make it easier to land jumps, kind of like Rayman's hovering. This game also has a hub world, but it only exists for cutscenes and nothing else. There's nothing in these hubs that you can do. Like, matter of fact, the only way you enter stages is by talking to an NPC. Like, at that point, why have hub worlds if you're gonna do that? There's also different types of styles of gameplay in this game, like a barrel, a motorboat, a snowboard, and a raft. You can also ride animals like moles and birds. The bosses aren't really that much of a challenge. I mean, they can be pretty annoying, but they're all pretty much pushovers. My least favorite boss fight is definitely one against Shaman, because the patterns are really hard to tell, and the attacks are way too fast. It took me like half an hour just to get the no damage achievement on this one boss, and he's the first boss in the game, so great job to anyone who did that. The graphics are pretty good. I think they aged about as well as any other platforming game that released around that time. I like KO's design in this game. It's a nice look for him. I think I like it just as much as the redesign. In fact, I actually played most of the reboot with the classic skin on. The soundtrack is a little bit too ambient for me. It's not a bad soundtrack, but I can't really remember any song to save my life, except for the song that plays on the title screen. But all in all, KO 2 is a pretty fun game. I know some people would just see this as a Rayman 2 clone, but I think it did pretty well for what it set out to be, so if you're really into obscure platforms from the 6th generation, then get this game. I mean, the game's like $2 on Steam, so I don't think it would hurt to add this to your library. Overall, I don't feel like I wasted my money with the Kao the Kangaroo reboot. Yeah, make improvements where it's needed, but I think that the end result is a solid adventure platformer for people who are in the genre in the first place. It's a pretty decent game, but when you can just play Power Reignited Trilogy or Crash the Insane Trilogy, I feel like this game would only appeal to Kao fans. But that being said, if you did enjoy the original Kao the Kangaroo trilogy, then you should get this game. It's on every console right now: PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Series X, Switch, and of course PC. It could take you about like 6, 7, or 8 hours to beat it on your first try, maybe 10 to 12 hours to go for 100%. I think that the game is pretty decent for a basic platforming game, but I just don't really see myself starting a new save all soon. But now that we got this video out the way, the poll for the next series review just finished up, with Sly Cooper winning most of the votes, and unfortunately Uncharted getting dead last. I'll get to the other franchises that didn't win the poll soon, but right now, it's falling Sly Cooper's turn to get a line in the spotlight, so I hope you guys really look forward to that, because I definitely am too, since this is another gem from my early years as a gamer. So I'll finally finish up the Sony platforming trio of the PS2, so until that video comes out, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace.